Monique Harrison wasn't just a CEO. She was a visionary, a trailblazer, and one of the few black women to lead a billion-dollar tech company in a world still dominated by privilege and power games. So when she received a personal invitation to a luxurious gala hosted by the Langford family, one of the wealthiest and most influential white dynasties in America, she saw it as a milestone moment, the final step toward a groundbreaking $900 million acquisition deal. But the night didn't unfold as expected. From the moment she arrived, she was treated like an outsider whispers behind champagne glasses, judgmental glances, and eventually, a humiliating encounter that would play out in front of dozens of elite guests. What the Langfords didn't realize was that beneath Monique's calm silence was a storm they couldn't contain. Because the very technology they needed, the innovation they planned to build their future on belonged to her. And she was about to make a decision that would cost them everything. This isn't just a story of disrespect. It's a story of power, pride, and the sweet silence of revenge served at the highest level. Monique Harrison was more than a CEO. She was a force of nature. At just 38, she had built Neuralink Technologies from the cramped back room of a shared office in downtown Atlanta into one of the most talked-about names in tech, pioneering neural data processing that promised to revolutionize everything from medicine to machine learning. Investors who once overlooked her were now tripping over themselves for a seat at her table. But Monique was no longer looking for validation. She was looking for visionaries, partners who understood the power of the future, not just the comfort of legacy. So when the Langford family reached out, inviting her to their highly exclusive weekend gala at their sprawling estate in the Hamptons, it caught her attention. The Langfords were old money owners of Langford Dynamics, a conglomerate built on defense contracts, surveillance systems, and AI security. Their empire stretched across continents, their influence laced into boardrooms and governments alike. Rumors whispered that the Langfords were interested in investing $900 million into Neuralink. If true, it would be one of the largest private tech deals in recent history. On the surface, it was the opportunity of a lifetime, but Monique had learned long ago some rooms welcome your brilliance and some just want to dim your light. She arrived at the estate just after sunset. The sky burned orange at the edges, fading into deep twilight. Her electric SUV, custom matte gray with Neural Link etching on the hood, glided silently up the winding driveway. The mansion loomed ahead like a cathedral of wealth, with limestone columns, arched glass windows, and a marble fountain dancing at the entrance. She stepped out of the vehicle in a sleek black gown that shimmered under the chandeliered portico. Her heels clicked against the stone with quiet confidence. Every detail had been chosen with intention, from the subtle African gold threading in her bracelet to the soft waves in her hair. She wasn't just attending, she was making a statement, but as soon as she exited the SUV, the warmth she expected was absent. The valet, a young man in a red blazer, stood frozen by the door. He glanced at her, hesitated, then reluctantly walked over, not to open her door, but to ask, "You making a delivery, ma'am?" Monique stared at him for a moment before responding, "No, I'm here for the gala. I'm on the guest list." His eyes widened slightly and he forced a nervous laugh, fumbling for the keys as she handed them over. "Of course, sorry about that." Monique gave a tight nod. No time for emotion. She walked past the tall doors flanked by security, both of whom gave her a brief one, Sover lingering just long enough for her to feel it. Inside the estate, the air was scented with imported lilies and fine champagne. A grand chandelier sparkled above like frozen starlight, casting elegant shadows on guests dressed in $1,000 tuxedos and couture gowns. The string quartet played softly in the background, blending into the hum of elite conversation. But the moment Monique entered, the energy shifted. People paused mid-sentence, a few eyebrows raised. Someone near the piano actually stopped playing for a beat. It wasn't awe. It was surprise, confusion even, as if her presence defied an unspoken script. She walked deeper into the ballroom, head high, spine straight. She'd been here before, not this estate, not this exact room, But this moment, where people saw her title, read her resume, but still couldn't process her presence in their world. A black woman with billions in value, walking unapologetically through a door they assumed she'd never reach. A white-gloved server passed her a glass of champagne. She took it, offering a polite smile. But her eyes were scanning, noting the clusters of conversation, the familiar faces: CEO, senators, media moguls, all carefully positioned. The Langfords themselves were nowhere in sight yet. She moved toward the seating chart, only to find her name placed at table 9 far from the head of the room, tucked near the exit. A table often reserved for interns, support staff, or guests of little strategic value. Monique's fingers traced over her nameplate. She said nothing, but the message was loud and clear. Still, she took her seat with quiet dignity. She wasn't here to chase approval. She was here to listen, to observe, and, if necessary, to make them regret underestimating her. What came next, though she never saw coming? The clinking of crystal, soft bursts of laughter, and the gentle hum of a live quartet filled the Langford estate's grand dining hall. Candlelight flickered across the faces of the ultra-wealthy, casting a golden glow over bone china and plated delicacies that looked more like art than food. Conversations about stock splits, offshore acquisitions, and upcoming elections floated through the air like perfumed smoke. Monique Harrison sat quietly at table 9. Her tablemates included 220, something tech assistants nervously refreshing their phones, a pair of high-strung socialites who seemed more interested in Instagram filters than the multi-million-dollar event they were attending, and an elderly man who kept confusing her with a different guest. She didn't mind the distance from the Langford family themselves after all. Sometimes being on the edge of her room gave you the best view of what really happened in it. But the placement wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. She could see it in the way the Langford sons Daniel and Preston held court at the central table, surrounded by executives and dignitaries. They hadn't even glanced her way. She noted that most of the Langford executives she'd corresponded with were seated near the front, laughing and toasting. No one had invited her to join them. No one had even acknowledged her presence. Still, Monique remained composed. She introduced herself politely, laughed when appropriate, and responded with warmth when someone made genuine conversation. She reminded herself why she was here: the deal, the $900 million investment. Not a party, not approval. But halfway through the meal, as the servers brought out the 4th course, a saffron lobster risotto, an elegant figure in diamonds and satin approached her table. It was Beatrice Langford, the matriarch of the Langford family. A name whispered with reverence and fear in elite circles. Beatrice had once been dubbed the Queen of Quiet Power by Forbes. She moved like royalty. Her heels made no sound. Her pearls gleamed like polished ice, and her smile, it was the kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. She leaned down just slightly, placing a manicured hand on Monique's shoulder. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice sugar-coated but brittle, "would you mind switching seats? This table is more your kind of crowd." The words didn't land immediately. The young intern across from Monique paused mid-bite. The socialite stopped mid-scroll. Even the string quartet seemed to falter, as if the tension had rippled to their sheet music. Monique turned her head slowly, her brow lifted just slightly. "Excuse me." Beatrice's smile never wavered. But her voice dropped to a whisper, syrupy and sharp. "We appreciate what you've done in your field," she said, drawing out the word like it left a bad taste. "But this dinner is for serious players, darling. It's nothing personal. We'll call your people when the time is right." Monique didn't blink. Her eyes locked on Beatrice, the moment stretching thin like glass about to crack. "I am the people you should be calling," she said, her voice even, steady. Beatrice gave a soft chuckle, patting Monique's shoulder again like one might calm a barking dog. Then she turned and walked away, heading back to her place at the center of power, her dismissal complete. Monique stood. The movement was slow, deliberate. She folded her napkin and placed it gently on the table. Her eyes scanned the room, and that's when she caught it. Daniel Langford, the eldest son, leaning toward one of his friends, smirking. Guess diversity has limits, he whispered. The friend laughed into his wine glass. Monique said nothing. But her silence was louder than any outburst could have been. She walked out of the dining hall with her head held high. Every step echoed off the marble like a gavel striking a verdict. Whispers chased her down the corridor. Phones were pulled out, discreet photos snapped. She didn't stop, didn't break stride, but inside her stomach tightened, her chest burned. She had been disrespected before. She had heard backhanded compliments, endured condescending questions, and smiled through boardrooms where she was doubted before she even spoke. But this was open dismissal, public rejection, and from people who thought they could buy her future while erasing her presence. But what they didn't realize, what they had completely failed to understand, was that Monique Harrison didn't just own a company. She owned the future of their industry. Patents, proprietary systems, AI integration frameworks, pieces of the neural network puzzle that Langford Dynamics desperately needed to stay ahead of their competitors. And tonight they had just shoved the most important woman in the room out the door, and they would pay for that mistake in more ways than they could ever imagine. The hotel suite was quiet except for the gentle hum of the city outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan's glowing skyline, but Monique Harrison wasn't in the mood for views. She walked in, kicked off her heels with a sigh, and dropped her clutch on the marble countertop. Her black gown shimmered under the pendant lighting, but all the elegance of the evening now felt like a bad costume she couldn't wait to shed. She peeled out of the gown and changed into a soft robe, pulling her braids into a loose bun. As she sat at the desk and flipped open her laptop, the notifications flooded in. 3 missed calls from Michael Langford, 1 text, "Please call me Usippy." She barely had time to read it before the screen lit up again. Call #4. She sighed. She wasn't surprised. Michael Langford was the only member of the Langford family who ever treated her like an equal. In their private meetings, he had come off as respectful, measured, and sharp, but tonight he had been conspicuously absent from the chaos. Too silent to be innocent, too late to matter. Still, curiosity got the better of her. She answered. "Monique, thank God." Michael's voice came through, tight and urgent. "I've been trying to reach you. That was not how we meant for things to go tonight." She said nothing, letting the silence speak. He rushed on. "Look, my mother, she was out of line, completely. I had no idea she'd do that, and my brothers, idiots, both of them. But my father and I, we still want to move forward with the $900 million acquisition. Don't let one bad evening derail." She cut him off, her tone calm but cold. "Your father didn't say anything. Your mother did, loud and clear, in front of 100 people. Michael paused, swallowing his frustration. "You know we need your neural link technology. You've built something no one else has. Langford Dynamics can take it global. We can scale it with speed, resources, influence. Let's meet in morning and work through this, please." Monique leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling as if the answer might be written there. But she already knew. While the Langfords had paraded her around like a charity act, she had been making quiet moves of her own. 2 days before flying to New York, she had a discreet dinner in Tokyo with Yuki Nakamura, the brilliant, enigmatic CEO of Vortex X Technologies, Langford Dynamics' fiercest competitor. Yuki had greeted her not with pomp or pageantry, but with sincerity and an open mind. No ego, no condescension. Just 2 women talking innovation over sushi in a private room high above the city. Yuki hadn't offered $900 million. She offered $600 million, but what came with it was something Monique couldn't buy from the Langfords at any price: respect. Total creative freedom, full ownership of her patents, shared vision, and a vow to never reduce her to a diversity box on a marketing brochure. As Michael kept talking, listing business terms, valuation metrics, timelines, Monique opened a new window on her laptop. She pulled up Yuki's contact. Michael was still speaking when Monique said softly, "I already made my decision." A pause. "What do you mean?" She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She simply typed out a short message. "I'm in, prepare for exclusive licensing." Then she pressed send. She said into the phone, "You'll want to check the news in about 24 hours. Michael's breath caught. "Monique, don't do this. We're offering you more than anyone ever has. That tech belongs with us." "No," she replied. "It belongs with someone who values both the product and the person who built it." She hung up. For a moment, the silence in the room felt heavier than it had all night. Monique stood and walked to the window. The city buzzed below her, alive with lights and movement, as if the world was shifting in real time. And maybe it was. She wasn't angry anymore. She was clear. The Langfords had money. She had vision. And tonight she had chosen power with dignity over wealth without worth. They thought they could humiliate her and still buy her brilliance. But they had underestimated one truth she lived by. The real deal isn't just about the numbers. It's about the people you choose to build the future with. And now the Langfords had just been cut out of that future. The Langfords had expected a quiet breakfast meeting at their Manhattan office, followed by a press release about the historic $900 million acquisition of Neuralink Technologies. Their PR team was already drafting headlines: Langford Dynamics secures future with breakthrough neural link merger. Their photographers were on stand, by to capture a photo op with Monique, shaking hands with the family patriarch under carefully lit chandeliers. But what they got was something far more powerful. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, journalists, tech influencers, and financial analysts packed into a sleek event space in Midtown. The invitation had been vague, special announcement from Neuralink CEO Monique Harrison. That alone had drawn a crowd. Monique rarely made public appearances. When she did, the industry listened. Cameras were already flashing as she walked out to the stage in a sharply tailored white suit that contrasted elegantly against the blue Neuralink backdrop behind her. Her calm, commanding presence silenced the room. No teleprompter, no assistants, just Monique and a podium. She adjusted the microphone, cleared her throat, and with a voice as smooth as polished steel, she began. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on such short notice." A quiet murmur ran through the audience. For the past year, Neuralink Technologies has been approached by several major players seeking to acquire or partner with our firm. We've taken every offer seriously because we believe our innovations are not just valuable, they're transformative. That said, she paused, letting her gaze sweep across the room. After careful consideration, Neuralink Technologies will not be moving forward with the acquisition deal proposed by Langford Dynamics. A collective gasp rippled across the audience. Reporters scrambled to jot down notes. Camera shutters clicked in rapid bursts. The words hit like a digital bomb. Monique didn't flinch. Instead, I am proud to announce a strategic partnership with Vortex X Technologies, a company whose vision aligns fully with our values of inclusion, creativity, and human-first innovation. Together, we will co-develop the next generation of neural link architecture, including exclusive licensing of all Neuralink patents and platforms. She let the crowd process that. Not only was she declining nearly $1 billion, she was locking Langford Dynamics out of the future of neural tech entirely. Hands shot into the air. Reporters were nearly tripping over one another to get called on. A voice from the front row rose above the rest. "Ms. Harrison, why the sudden change? Just days ago, the Langfords were preparing a major announcement." Monique smiled, not smugly, but with purpose. "Because I believe that partnerships should be built on respect, not humiliation." Gasps again, but this time it wasn't from surprise. It was from knowing. Many in the room had already heard whispers of what had happened at the Langford Gala. The social media rumor mill had been churning since the night Monique walked out of the Hamptons estate. Now she was confirming what insiders suspected. Technology is the future. She continued, her tone unwavering. But the people who shape it, that's what truly matters. At Neuralink, we don't just sell innovation. We live our values, and we will only build with those who share them. The audience erupted into applause, not polite, not staged, genuine. By noon, the clip of her speech was everywhere posted on tech blogs, finance sites, and viral TikToks under captions like "Queen moves only." And when they try to humble you, so you build a throne instead. Langford Dynamics' PR team rushed to issue a counterstatement. "We respect a mess. Harrison's decision and remain committed to innovation in the neural space. But the damage was done. By end of day, Langford Dynamics stock dropped 11%, wiping nearly $2 billion in market value. Investors began questioning the company's leadership. Beatrice Langford, once untouchable, was now the subject of editorials titled Out of Touch or Out of Time. Meanwhile, Vortex X shares soared, and Neuralink's public visibility reached unprecedented heights. But Monique didn't celebrate on camera. She didn't do a victory tour. She returned quietly to her office where her team greeted her with pride, and perhaps a bit of awe. "You just rewrote the rules," her CTO whispered. Monique smiled faintly and replied, "No, I just reminded them who I am." She had been dismissed as an accessory. But now she was the whole enterprise. The Langford penthouse sat high above Fifth Avenue, a fortress of gold, glass, and ego. It had once hosted presidents and foreign dignitaries, its walls lined with rare art and its floors imported from Italian quarries. But tonight, the air inside was still tense and thick, like a storm had passed and left behind silence. Beatrice Langford sat stiffly on a velvet chaise, clenching a crystal tumbler in one hand and the TV remote in the other. Her expression was carved from stone, but her eyes betrayed her, the sharp flickers of disbelief, fury, and a growing fear she didn't know how to name. On the screen before her played a news segment from a major network. The headline read, "Monique Harrison rejects billion-dollar deal, redefines tech leadership." The footage cut between Monique's powerful press conference and clips of Langford Dynamics' stock graph nose, diving like a wounded plane. Beatrice clicked the remote angrily. The screen went black, but the shame remained. "That woman," she muttered through clenched teeth. "She embarrassed us." From the far end of the room, Michael Langford stood by the massive window, hands in his pockets, staring out over the city his family once ruled without question. "She didn't embarrass us," he said quietly. Beatrice snapped her head toward him. Michael turned, eyes locked on hers, voice low but clear. "You did." Beatrice's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. You treated her like a statistic, like a spectacle. You let your arrogance speak louder than your judgment," he said. "We needed her, and instead of respecting her, you pushed her out. She was difficult, cold." "No," Michael replied. "She was brilliant, and she saw through you, through all of us." He walked away without another word, leaving his mother alone in her silence, one built brick by brick from decades of unchecked entitlement. A few miles away, the world felt different. In a quiet, cozy cafe tucked into a Brooklyn corner, Monique Harrison sat at a small table by the window. She wore no makeup, no tailored suit, just a cream sweater, jeans, and gold hoop earrings. She sipped a cup of rooibos tea, the scent of cinnamon drifting around her as soft jazz played overhead. Her phone buzzed every few minutes. CNN, Forbes, Wired, TED, invitations to speak, offers to write a book. Podcast requests. Everyone wanted to hear from the woman who had publicly walked away from $1 billion deal and won. But Monique wasn't interested in interviews. She wasn't chasing headlines. She wasn't basking in the attention. She was building something bigger. On the table beside her cup sat a leather notebook filled with ideas, plans to expand Neuralink into underserved communities, to create low-cost brainwave tech for schools, to launch mentorship labs for Black girls in STEM. The deal with Vortex X had opened not just doors, but vaults of opportunity. Across the city, her team was setting up a new satellite office. Vortex X had given her full autonomy. Her engineers, researchers, and developers, many of whom were people of color, women, or first-generation college grads, now had a platform to do work that mattered. 3 weeks later, Neuralink's valuation hit $1 billion. Tech media dubbed it the smartest pivot in modern startup history. Investors who once passed on Monique now scrambled to get in. Too late. Even more staggering, Vortex X officially overtook Langford Dynamics as the top innovator in AI-powered biointegration. Langford's hold on the future had slipped through their perfectly manicured fingers, but Monique, she wasn't celebrating. She wasn't seeking revenge. She simply went on doing what she'd always done, leading with excellence, grounded in purpose. When a journalist asked her if she felt vindicated, she smiled and said, "This was never about revenge. It was about respect. I just stopped waiting for it and chose to build with people who gave it freely." She never mentioned Beatrice Langford's name. She didn't have to. In time, the story became legend in Silicon Valley circles and MBA case studies alike. The black woman CEO who walked into the lion's den refused to be tamed and left the whole empire shaking. The Langfords, they faded into the background, still wealthy, still powerful, but no longer untouchable. Their aura had cracked, and no amount of spin could fix what pride had cost them, because they had made one fatal mistake. They dismissed the future, and the future had walked in wearing heels, speaking softly, but making seismic waves. Her name was Monique Harrison, and the world would never forget it. In a world where power often comes with prejudice, Monique Harrison proved that dignity speaks louder than dollars. She didn't need to shout, retaliate, or stoop to their level. She simply walked away and built a legacy even bigger. The $900 million deal they thought she needed, it was never about the money, it was about respect. And Monique showed us all that no matter how powerful the room, if they don't honor who you are, you have every right to leave and build your own table. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. What would you have done in Monique's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, respect isn't optional, and success tastes better when it's earned with integrity. More inspiring stories like this are coming your way, right here on Hidden Realities. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone dim your light.